The lie I told myself was that I liked the music. That was the reason I stood in line for 45 minutes every Friday night, shuffling my feet on the cracked pavement, pretending to be engrossed in my phone. The lie was that the overpriced, watered-down drinks at the Alibi were somehow better than the ones I could have for a quarter of the price at any other dive bar in a 3-block radius. It was a flimsy, pathetic lie, and it dissolved the second I saw him. Marcus. He was my truth. He stood at the door like a statue carved from granite and patience, a dark silhouette against the pulsing purple light spilling from inside. The uniform was simple, a black t-shirt that strained across his chest and shoulders, black cargo pants, and boots that looked heavy enough to anchor a ship. It wasn't the uniform that held my attention, though. It was the way he wore it. The way he inhabited his own space with an unnerving stillness, an economy of movement that made everyone else seem frantic and clumsy. His presence was a low hum in the chaotic symphony of the city night, a frequency I was tuned to with painful, secret precision. For 2 years, this had been my ritual, a pilgrimage to the church of my own unrequited devotion. I'd stand in line, get my drink, find a shadowed corner, and watch him. I watched the way his eyes, a deep and unreadable brown, scanned the crowd with a placid professionalism that never wavered. I watched the subtle flex of his jaw when a drunk college kid got too loud. I watched the way his hands, large and capable, would rest gently on someone's elbow to guide them out, a gesture of surprising delicacy from a man of his size. I had cataloged 1,000 of these tiny moments, hoarding them like a miser's gold. They were all I had of him. Tonight, the line was a particular kind of hell. A bachelorette party, loud and glittering with cheap tiaras, was ahead of me. A group of finance bros, reeking of entitlement and aggressive cologne, were behind me. I felt invisible, a gray man in a gray coat, just another anonymous face in the queue. I was resigned to my usual hour-long wait when his head turned. It was a slow, deliberate motion. His gaze swept past the shrieking women, over the tops of the shouting men, and then it stopped. On me. For a heartbeat, the world went silent. The thumping bass from the club, the traffic on the street, the chatter around me. It all faded into a dull roar. There was only the sudden, sharp focus of his attention. My own heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. He held my gaze for a second that stretched into an eternity. There was no smile, no overt sign of recognition, just that steady, assessing look. Then, he gave a short, almost imperceptible nod. Not to the line, but to me. He said something to the other bouncer, a wiry guy named Kevin who I knew only by sight, and then he was moving. He didn't push through the crowd. The crowd simply parted for him, a human sea receding from a stone shore. He walked with a grounded, unhurried gait that was pure Marcus. Each step had purpose. I watched him get closer, my breath catching in my throat. My internal monologue, usually a constant stream of self-deprecating chatter, went blissfully, terrifyingly blank. He stopped directly in front of me. Up close, he was even more imposing. I had to tilt my head back slightly to meet his eyes. He smelled of the cold night air, a faint, clean scent of soap, and something else, something uniquely him that I could never quite place. A warm, earthy scent like cedarwood and worn leather. Leo, he said. My name from his lips was a low rumble, a sound that seemed to vibrate in my very bones. It always surprised me that he knew it. I'd told him once, months ago, in a brief, awkward exchange at the bar. I never thought he'd remember. Marcus. I managed, my own voice sounding thin and reedy in comparison. Line's a mess tonight, it wasn't a question. His eyes flickered over the crowd with a hint of something I couldn't decipher. Annoyance? Resignation? Yeah. It's lively brilliant, Leo. Absolutely brilliant. He didn't seem to notice my staggering eloquence. A small smile, barely a ghost of one, touched the corner of his mouth. It was a rare, precious thing, and seeing it directed at me sent a jolt of warmth through my chest. Come on, he said, and gestured with his head toward the entrance. Don't wait in this. My mind scrambled. He's just being nice. He does this for people he knows. It doesn't mean anything. But another, more hopeful part of me whispered, he saw you. He came to get you. I was paralyzed by the warring factions in my own head. Marcus must have seen the hesitation on my face. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. It's okay, he said, his voice lower now, meant only for me. Just follow me. And so I did. I fell into step behind him as he led me toward the velvet rope. The finance bros behind me grumbled, and one of them said something crude, but a single, brief glance from Marcus over his shoulder silenced them instantly. It was like watching a switch being flipped. The power he held was quiet, but absolute. As we reached the front, he unclipped the rope, holding it open for me. His knuckles brushed against the fabric of my coat as I passed, a fleeting touch that sent a spark all the way up my arm. Thanks, I mumbled, feeling my face flush. He just nodded, clipping the rope back into place. Get yourself a drink. I'll see you around. He turned back to his post, his back once again a broad, solid wall against the chaos of the street. I stood there for a moment inside the doorway, the bass of the music vibrating through the soles of my shoes, my head spinning. He had waited. He had seen me, and he had come for me. The old, flimsy lie about the music and the drinks felt more ridiculous than ever. I was here for him. I had always been here for him. And tonight, for the first time, it felt like maybe, just maybe, he was here for me, too. I found my usual spot, a small, wobbly two-top in a corner that offered a clear line of sight to the front door. It was wedged between a speaker that was buzzing with distortion and a pillar wrapped in peeling faux leather. It was objectively the worst table in the entire establishment, but to me, it was prime real estate. From here, I could engage in my sad, secret pastime, watching Marcus exist. I nursed a gin and tonic, the condensation from the glass leaving a wet ring on the scarred tabletop. The ice clinked softly as I swirled it, a tiny, repetitive sound in the overwhelming noise of the bar. The crowd was a pulsing, sweaty organism. Bodies pressed together on the dance floor, heads bobbing in and out of the sweeping spotlights. The air was thick with the smells of spilled beer, cheap perfume, and desperation. I felt utterly detached from it all, an anthropologist studying a strange and vibrant tribe from the safety of my observation post. My gaze, as always, found its way back to Marcus. He was a fixed point in a swirling universe. I watched him check an ID, his expression neutral as he tilted the small plastic card under the light. He handed it back with a low word, his attention already shifting to the next person. He was efficient, professional, almost mechanical. But I had been watching for too long not to see the details others missed. I saw the slight tightening around his eyes when a man stumbled near the door, a silent calculation of whether the man was a threat or just clumsy. I saw the way his shoulders, which seemed perpetually braced, relaxed by a fraction of an inch when a group of regulars he knew came through. I saw him share a quick, low laugh with Kevin, the other bouncer, a brief flash of unguarded warmth before his stoic mask slipped back into place. These were the crumbs I lived on, these tiny, insignificant moments that I would collect and analyze for days. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes that time. Was he tired? Stressed? The way he rested his hand on the doorframe, was that just habit, or was his back hurting? It was an exhausting, obsessive hobby, trying to assemble a complete person from these fragmented glimpses. Tonight, however, the calculus had changed. The equation had a new variable, me. His act of pulling me from the line replayed in my mind on a loop. It was such a small thing, a courtesy he might extend to any familiar face. My logical brain insisted on this, but my heart, that foolish, hopeful organ, insisted on weaving it into a grand narrative. He sought me out. He wanted me inside. He wanted me closer. I took a long swallow of my drink, the gin sharp on my tongue. The alcohol did little to quiet the frantic buzzing in my skull. I felt exposed, as if my years of secret observation had suddenly been laid bare. Did he know? Could he possibly know how I felt? The thought was mortifying. The idea that he might look at me and see not just Leo, the quiet guy who comes in every Friday, but Leo, the pathetic piner, made my skin crawl with shame. I tried to look away, to focus on anything else. The bartenders, a blur of flying hands and shining shakers. The dancers, lost in their own worlds. But my eyes were magnets, and he was true north. My gaze drifted back to him, helpless. As if he could feel the weight of my stare, his head turned again. He looked directly at my corner. Our eyes met across the crowded room. This time, there was no mistaking it. He wasn't just scanning the room. He was looking at me. The music seemed to warp and slow down. The space between us was electric, a live wire crackling with unspoken things. He held my gaze for 3 solid heartbeats. My breath hitched. I felt a blush creep up my neck, hot and undeniable. I should have looked away, played it cool, pretended I was just glancing around. But I couldn't. I was pinned by the intensity of that look. Then, just as quickly as it started, it was over. He gave me another one of those tiny, almost imperceptible nods and turned his attention back to the door. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. My hands were trembling slightly. I wrapped them around my cold glass to steady them. It was nothing. A coincidence. He was doing his job, scanning the room for trouble, and my table just happened to be in his line of sight. That had to be it. Any other interpretation was pure fantasy, the product of a lonely mind desperate for connection. And yet, the certainty I felt in that moment, the feeling of being seen, truly seen, by him, it lingered. It settled deep in my chest, a warm, heavy stone of possibility. An hour later, Marcus moved from the door. He did a slow lap around the perimeter of the club, his presence a subtle but effective form of crowd control. His path would take him right past my table. My pulse quickened in anticipation. This was the moment I both craved and dreaded. The casual, meaningless proximity that I would inevitably inflate into something significant. I pretended to be fascinated by the melting ice in my glass, staring down as if it held the secrets of the universe. I could feel him approaching, a change in the air, a shift in the energy around me. He was a large man. He cast a long shadow. His shadow fell over my table. I didn't look up. I heard the soft scuff of his boots on the sticky floor. He was right there. My entire body was a tightly coiled spring of awareness. I could smell that clean, cedarwood scent again, stronger now, cutting through the stale air of the bar. Everything all right over here? His voice was low, close to my ear, easily cutting through the din. I forced myself to look up, aiming for an expression of casual surprise. I'm sure I missed the mark entirely and landed somewhere near startled deer. Yeah, all good. Just enjoying the music. The lie felt even more foolish now, saying it directly to his face. His eyes crinkled at the corners. He knew. Of course, he knew. He was looking at my untouched second drink, at the way I was huddled in the loudest, most uncomfortable corner of his workplace. Right. The music, there was a definite hint of amusement in his tone now. His gaze dropped from my face to the table, then back up. You come here a lot. I like to get out of the apartment on Fridays, I said, which was technically true. And you always sit here, another statement of fact. He was not asking questions. He was presenting evidence. My secret was unraveling, thread by thread. It's a good spot, I deflected weakly. Good for people watching. Is that what you're doing? He asked, his voice dropping even lower. People watching? The question hung in the air between us, heavy with implication. He was looking at me with that same intense, searching gaze from before. He was asking something else entirely. Are you watching everyone, or are you just watching me? The challenge was clear. My throat went dry. I had no answer for him, none that I was brave enough to give. He held my gaze for a moment longer, a silent battle of wills. I was the first to break, my eyes dropping back to my drink. I felt a wave of shame. I was a coward. I expected him to move on, to continue his patrol, but he didn't. Instead, he rested a hand on the back of the empty chair at my table. His fingers were long, the knuckles slightly scarred. I stared at his hand, at the way it seemed to anchor the flimsy chair to the floor. Shifts over in an hour, he said, his voice back to its neutral, professional tone. Place clears out fast after last call. He paused, and I could feel him watching me, waiting for me to look up again. I couldn't. I just kept staring at his hand. I'll be here. Then he was gone. The space where he had stood felt strangely empty, the air cold. I finally lifted my head and watched his broad back as he walked away. I'll be here. It wasn't an invitation. It wasn't a demand. It was a simple statement of fact, but it felt like a lifeline. He was giving me a choice. I could scurry home to my quiet apartment and my lonely thoughts, or I could stay. I could wait. My heart was pounding a frantic, terrifying, hopeful rhythm against my ribs. I picked up my glass, my hand steady now, and took a long, slow sip. I was going to wait. The last hour was the longest of my life. I ordered another drink I didn't want, just to have something to do with my hands. I watched the clock on my phone, the numbers changing with excruciating slowness. 1:45, 1:52, 2 o'clock. The lights came up, not all the way, but enough to chase away the manufactured intimacy of the night. The music died abruptly, replaced by the jarringly cheerful sound of a pop song I didn't recognize. The spell was broken. The human organism of the crowd disintegrated into individuals, suddenly aware of the time, the sweat on their skin, the person they were going home with, or the fact that they were going home alone. The exodus was quick. A tide of bodies flowed toward the exit, leaving a wake of empty glasses, discarded napkins, and the faint scent of regret. I stayed put in my corner, feeling increasingly conspicuous as the room emptied. The bar staff moved with practiced efficiency, clearing tables, wiping down surfaces. The sounds of clattering glass and shouted conversations replaced the thumping bass. I felt a familiar pang of anxiety. Maybe I'd misread everything. Maybe his words meant nothing, just a casual observation. He'd be busy with closing duties. He'd walk right past me without a second glance, and I'd be left sitting here like an idiot. The thought made my stomach clench. I watched the front door. Marcus was still there, managing the flow of people leaving. He was just as calm and steady directing the departing crowd as he was with the arriving one. He nodded to some, offered a quiet good night to others. My gaze was locked on him, waiting for the moment he would turn, look for me, and either confirm my hopes or shatter them completely. Finally, the last of the patrons stumbled out into the night. Kevin, the other bouncer, locked the main doors, the sound of the deadbolt echoing in the now cavernous-seeming space. Marcus turned from the door, his shoulders slumping just a fraction, the tension of his long shift finally beginning to release. He stretched, his arms reaching for the ceiling, and the hem of his black t-shirt lifted, revealing a tantalizing strip of skin above the waistband of his pants. My mouth went dry. He ran a hand over his face, then through his short, dark hair. He looked tired. He looked human. For a moment, he just stood there, surveying the empty club. And then his eyes found me. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked at me, a long, unreadable look from across the room. Then he started walking toward my table. Every step he took felt like a drumbeat counting down to a verdict. My hands were slick with sweat. I wiped them on my jeans, my heart threatening to beat its way out of my chest. He pulled out the empty chair across from me and sat down. The small table suddenly felt even smaller. The space between us was charged, intimate. He leaned forward, resting his forearms on the table, his presence filling my entire field of vision. The world shrank to just this table, just the two of us surrounded by the quiet chaos of closing time. "You waited," he said. It was a simple observation, but his voice was soft, laced with something I couldn't name. Surprise? Satisfaction. "You said you'd be here," I replied, my voice barely a whisper. We sat in silence for a moment. It wasn't an awkward silence. It was heavy, full of all the things we hadn't said. I could hear the rhythmic clinking of glasses as the bartender cleaned up, the low murmur of the staff, but it all felt a million miles away. Here, in our little bubble, it was quiet. I could hear the sound of my own breathing. I was sure he could hear it too. "So," he began, his eyes never leaving mine. "People watching." He said the words gently, but the challenge was still there. He was giving me another chance to be honest. My throat felt tight. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but beneath it, there was something else. A flicker of courage, ignited by his presence, by the fact that he was here, sitting across from me, waiting for an answer. This is it. Now or never. I take a breath. The air feels thick, heavy. I can't look at him, not while I say it. My eyes drop to his hands, resting on the table just inches from my own. They are strong hands, steady hands. I focus on them. "No," I say, the word coming out quiet but clear. "Not people, just one person." The silence that follows is absolute. I risk a glance up at him. His expression hasn't changed. He is still just watching me, his gaze intense, unwavering. He doesn't look shocked, or disgusted, or amused. He just looks like he's finally hearing something he's known for a very long time. "Me," he says. It's not a question. It's a conclusion. I can only nod. The admission is out. The secret I've carried for 2 years is laid bare on this sticky, beer-stained table between us. I feel a bizarre mix of terror and relief. There's no taking it back now. I brace myself for the rejection, for the pitying look, for the awkward. I'm flattered, but I'm straight. But that's not what happens. Marcus leans back in his chair, a slow, deliberate movement. He breaks eye contact for the first time, his gaze drifting over my shoulder as if looking at something far away. He lets out a long, slow breath. I watch the muscles in his jaw work for a moment. My stomach plummets. This is it. The gentle letdown. Then he looks back at me. And for the first time all night, for the first time in the 2 years I've been watching him, he gives me a real smile. Not the ghost of one, not a professional courtesy. A genuine, slow-spreading smile that transforms his entire face. It reaches his eyes, making them crinkle and shine with a warmth that melts the knot of fear in my stomach. "Took you long enough," he says, his voice a low, amused rumble. My brain short-circuits. What? The words don't compute. Took you long enough? What did that mean? I stare at him, my mouth slightly agape, searching for the punchline. This had to be a joke, a cruel, gentle joke before he let me down for real. What? I managed to stammer. His smile widens. He shakes his head slowly, a look of fond exasperation on his face. "Leo," he says my name like it's a favorite word. "Did you really think I didn't know?" I am reeling. He knew. He had known. For how long? All this time I thought I was being so clever, so discreet in my shadowed corner. I thought I was the observer, the one with the secret. But he had been observing me right back. The dynamic I had so carefully constructed in my mind, the watcher and the watched, was a complete fiction. We had been watching each other. You're not. I can't finish the sentence. Not straight. He finishes for me, his voice soft. No, I'm not. He leans forward again, closing the small distance between us. His eyes are dark and serious now. I just figured you needed to get there on your own time. I didn't want to push. My world tilts on its axis. All my carefully constructed theories, all my anxious internal monologues, all the narratives of unrequited love and hopeless pining, they all crumble to dust. The reality is something simpler and infinitely more terrifying and beautiful. Mutual. It was all mutual. I am completely without words. My mind is a blank slate, wiped clean by the shock. Marcus seems to understand. He reaches across the table, his movements slow and deliberate, giving me plenty of time to pull away. He covers my hand with his. His palm is warm and slightly calloused, and the contact sends a jolt of pure electricity through me. It's not a fleeting brush of knuckles this time. It's a firm, grounding pressure. A connection. "It's okay," he says, his thumb stroking gently over the back of my hand. "Breathe." I realize I've been holding my breath again. I let it out in a shaky rush. I look down at his hand covering mine. It looks right. It feels right. After 2 years of watching from a distance, of imagining what his touch might feel like, the reality of it is both overwhelming and profoundly calming. "So," I say, finding my voice again, though it's thick with emotion. "That whole thing with the line." He chuckles, a low, warm sound. "I saw you standing out there looking miserable. I wasn't going to make you wait." He squeezes my hand. "I've been waiting long enough." The raw honesty of his words hits me like a physical blow. He had been waiting. For me. The thought is so immense, so far beyond the scope of what I had allowed myself to hope for, that I feel a prickling behind my eyes. "Hey," his voice is gentle, pulling me back from the edge of tears. "You with me?" I look up and meet his gaze. The warmth, the sincerity, the open affection in his eyes is almost too much to bear. I give him a wobbly, watery smile. "Yeah," I whisper. "I'm with you." He holds my gaze for a long moment, his thumb continuing its soothing motion on my hand. The last of the staff are grabbing their coats, calling out good nights. "Soon, it will be just us." "Good," he says softly. "Come on, let's get out of here." He stands, but he doesn't let go of my hand. He just waits, his fingers laced with mine, a silent, solid promise. I stand up, my legs feeling a little unsteady. For the first time, I walk out of the alibi not alone, but with my hand held firmly in his. The cold night air feels different now, not harsh, but clean and full of possibility. The future, which had always seemed like a vast, empty room, suddenly had a door, and Marcus was holding it open for me. We walked in silence. The city was in its quiet hours, the time between the last drunks stumbling home and the first delivery trucks starting their engines. The streets were empty, washed in the pale, ethereal glow of the streetlights. Our footsteps echoed in the stillness, a steady, two-part rhythm. His hand was still wrapped around mine, a warm, solid anchor in the cool night. My fingers were laced through his, a perfect fit. I kept glancing down at our joined hands, as if to confirm they were real. My mind was a whirlwind. I was trying to recalibrate 2 years of my life. Every lonely Friday night, every stolen glance, every obsessive analysis of a neutral expression, it all looked different now, viewed through the lens of this new, impossible truth. He knew. He was waiting. The thought was so staggering that my brain could barely process it. While I had been writing a tragedy of unrequited love in my head, he had been patiently waiting for the romantic comedy to start. The sheer absurdity of it almost made me laugh. Marcus seemed content with the silence. He walked with that same unhurried, grounded pace, his presence beside me a comforting weight. I studied his profile in the intermittent light of the street lamps. The strong line of his jaw, the straight bridge of his nose, the way his dark lashes rested against his cheek when he blinked. For years, I had only seen him as a figure of authority, a stoic guardian at the gate. Now, walking beside me, he was just a man who had waited for me. We reached the corner where I would normally turn to head back to my apartment. I slowed, a knot of familiar anxiety forming in my stomach. This was the moment, the end of the night. He would let go of my hand, say goodnight, and I would be left wondering if any of it was real, if I had dreamt the whole thing. He stopped, turning to face me. The streetlight above us cast a halo around his head, but he didn't let go of my hand. If anything, his grip tightened slightly. "This is you?" he asked, his voice low. "Yeah," I said, my voice barely audible. "My place is just down that way." He nodded slowly, his eyes searching my face. I could feel my own expression, a pathetic mix of hope and fear. "Please don't let this be the end." "I don't want to say goodnight," he said, his voice quiet but firm. The words were a direct echo of the frantic prayer in my own head. Relief washed over me so powerfully I felt my knees go weak. "Me neither," I whispered. He took a small step closer, closing the remaining space between us. He was so close now I could feel the warmth radiating from his body. He lifted his free hand, his movements still so slow and deliberate, and cupped my jaw. His thumb stroked gently along my cheekbone. His skin was rough in a pleasant way, the touch both gentle and impossibly firm. "I am here. Now. This is happening." My eyes flutter shut. I lean into his touch, a silent surrender. After years of yearning from a distance, the simple fact of his hand on my skin is the most profound intimacy I have ever known. I feel his breath, warm and smelling faintly of coffee from his end-of-shift drink, ghost across my lips. "Leo," he murmurs, his voice thick. And then he kisses me. It's nothing like the frantic, desperate kisses I had imagined in my loneliest moments. There is no rush, no uncertainty. It is slow and deep and sure. His lips are soft, firm, and they move against mine with a patient exploration that speaks of long-held restraint finally being released. It is a kiss that says, finally. It says, "I've been waiting for this." It says, "You're safe with me." My own anxieties, the years of fear and self-doubt, they all melt away in the heat of his mouth. I bring my free hand up to his chest, my fingers curling into the soft cotton of his shirt. I can feel the steady, powerful beat of his heart under my palm. It's as calm and solid as he is. My own heart, in contrast, is a hummingbird, fluttering wildly, joyfully. He deepens the kiss, one hand still holding mine, the other cradling my face as if I were something precious. It's a kiss of profound tenderness and barely contained passion, a promise of everything that has been unsaid between us. It's a conversation without words, and I understand every single syllable. When he finally pulls back, it's only by an inch. He rests his forehead against mine. Our breath mingles in the cold air. My eyes are still closed. I don't want to open them. I want to live in this perfect, suspended moment forever. "My place is closer," he says, his voice a low rumble that vibrates through me. My eyes open. He is looking at me, his dark eyes soft and full of a startling vulnerability. The bouncer, the stoic protector, is gone. In his place is just Marcus. And he is asking, not telling. I can only nod, my throat too tight with emotion to speak. He gives me a small, soft smile, a smile of pure relief. He brings my hand, still clasped in his, up to his lips and presses a gentle kiss to my knuckles. The gesture is so unexpectedly tender, so romantic, it almost undoes me. "Come on," he says softly. "Let's go home." He didn't say my place, he said home, and as we walked away from my street and toward his, our hands still tightly clasped, I felt it. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was finally, truly, on my way home.